Hello Chameleon Wranglers, this is Bill Strand, and today we're going to be talking about setting up a quarantine cage. Now, when would you need a quarantine cage? Because I keep talking about how you should get a captive hatched chameleon and work with a breeder. That's true, but there may come a time where, number one, you start a breeding project, and so you may have to bring in wild-caught blood, or else you're just being cautious. Just because you get a captive bred chameleon doesn't mean they don't have parasites. Quarantine is actually the best thing to do whenever you bring a new chameleon into your collection. Of course, the purpose of quarantine is to make sure that that chameleon is healthy, and you can do all of your checks to make sure there's no parasites that could go to other chameleons in your collection. While we chameleon keepers, we don't keep chameleons together. If they are in the same room, our hands go from cage to cage when we maintain the cage or feed the chameleons. And so we need to be aware of everything we do. So what I've got behind me is a couple of cages with some wild-caught chameleons that I'm going through the fecal tests to check for parasites. And so until I know that they're clean, I'm going to be very careful. And this is how I set up a cage when I'm being careful. So the first thing I do is I imagine the cage in halves. I have a front half and a back half. And in the front half, I'm going to put these plants because I want a wall of plants as a visual barrier. And in the back half, I'm going to have a network of branches, and that's going to be the perching area. Now, for the plants, I specifically pick plants that aren't going to drape over. The spider plants are perfect because they grow up. Yes, they have little babies that come off the side, but what I do is I make sure all of them come to the front side. And so there's nothing dangling on the back side because I don't want anything to be in the way of the poop when it falls down to the floor. As you know, the poop is where the parasites are going to be putting their eggs, their oocysts, and their infectious stages looking for a new host. And we have to make sure that those don't find our chameleon again. The most common way that parasites reinfect a host is by the oral route. And so what we're trying to avoid is the poop hitting any surfaces that the chameleon might lick. Those are the leaves. When using the spider plants where the leaves go up, there's much less chance of any of those leaves coming into contact with poop. Now, just for fun and demonstration purposes, I did use a pothos, which is actually one of the worst plants to use in a situation like this because the big leaves can both catch poop as well as be an attractive place to drink water off of. So what I've done in this case is I have taken all of the leaves and I have put them down the front. So there's no leaves in back that can catch the poop. And that's one way to do it. I'm also strategic in how I do the perching branches behind the plants. You'll notice that I'm as careful as possible that I don't have branches on top of each other. And so if the chameleon poops, it's not going to hit the branch below it where the chameleon might walk through it. And finally, I feed them in a way that minimizes the chance that anything can get out of the feeder dish. And so to feed, I use this feeder run cup. This is very much like the design that I originally came up with in 2002. All I do is take a milk carton and I carve it out, put something that the insects are going to crawl on the back, some drainage holes in the bottom, and what I have is a very cheap feeder run cup that I can throw away afterwards. I can clean it, I can throw it away. And of course, there's the little paper clip hanger on the back. And so it's a inexpensive and easy to work with. As far as what I feed quarantine chameleons, I actually like to feed dubia and superworms. I avoid crickets because I don't want things that'll jump out of the feeder run cup. And so I avoid crickets. I avoid hissers because they can climb up the sides. Simply put, I just don't want any feeder insects to be able to get down to the bottom of the cage, even though I discourage the chameleon from going down there by not having my network of branches down there. You know, these are chameleons. They will darn well go wherever they want. And so I don't want to have anything at the bottom that will attract them. Other than that, when you're bringing in a wild-caught chameleon or a chameleon that's going to be nervous, I suggest a solid side cage. At the very least, have a visual barrier. In this is a Dragon Strand tall hybrid cage, and it's got these PVC sides. And so this is a perfect cage to quarantine a chameleon in. Thank you very much for joining me here, and good luck quarantining your chameleon. It's worth it to do it. I know it's a pain in the butt to do, and it's a lot of work to be careful with your hands and what you touch, but it's worth it. I suppose I'll do one last reminder here. Be very careful about your hands and the latches of your cage. And what I mean by this is if you go into the cage and you're messing with it and you're picking up poop, you're maintaining or whatever, you know you need to clean your hands. So what do is you come out, you close the cage, you latch it, you go in, you wash your hands, and then you come back with the food or whatever you're going to do. You unlatch the cage and then you go in. But that latch is the important part, because if you were cleaning your cage and you got something on your hands and then you went and you latched the cage, you transferred whatever oocysts are you had on your hands to the latch. And so going and washing your hands is wonderful, but the second you come back and touch that latch, you are now transmitting parasites to wherever you touch. So close the cage with your elbow, maintain the cage with gloves on, and then take the gloves off before you latch the cage closed. We interrupt this video for a quick tutorial from an EMT on how to remove gloves without contaminating yourself.
Let's talk about the proper way to remove gloves without passing the contaminants onto your bare skin. Assume that the gloves are covered with some nasty that you don't want on your skin. So, the outside layer of the glove needs to never touch your bare skin. And when you take off your gloves, you don't do this. You see, I've smeared whatever is on this all onto my skin. You grab the palm of your hand like this, and then you pull the glove off. Ball up the glove in this hand, and then take your finger, and it's much easier to get under the glove if you go like this. If you try to get under like this, you're going to probably miss and smear your hand all over what's on this glove. Put your finger in like this, and you have now taken off your gloves safely.
And now back to your regularly scheduled video. Just be aware that whatever you touch, you could be transporting oocysts, infectious worms to wherever else you are in the room. And yes, I am now brushing up against a plant that's in a quarantine cage, so I'm going to have to be careful about where my shoulder goes. One final thought on this video. I know it may surprise many of you that I made extensive use of living plants. And I'm doing this, I specifically chose to do this because I believe that is better for the chameleon mentally to help them acclimate and adjust to this new environment. It's a personal decision that I have made. I fully realize, and if you use live plants, you'll fully have to realize that you may end up having to throw those plants away. If there's any pathogens detected, any parasites or anything, you can't clean that out of the dirt or the leaves, and so you will have to throw those plants away. This is why many people use plastic plants in the quarantine situation, because those can be disinfected. So, personal decision on my part. I just wanted to explain why I'm doing it, and that yes, I fully realize I will probably have to throw away those beautiful plants. It'll break my heart, but that's what's required.